He stood surrounded by trees and whispers, the murmur of a small Arkansas town that clung to its secrets. May 1993 marked a time when the quiet streets of West Memphis were shattered, not by a storm or natural calamity, but something far more sinister. 8-year-old Stevie Branch loved riding his bike, the wind tussling his hair as he raced through the neighborhood. His infectious laugh often echoed down the street, a sound as familiar as the afternoon sun setting over the town. His mother, Pam, cherished these moments, especially the way he'd wrap his arms around her neck, demanding a piggyback ride whenever she picked him up from school. But on May 5, 1993, the laughter ceased. Stevie didn't come home that evening. Beside Stevie were his friends, Christopher Byers and Michael Moore, both 8 as well. Michael, known for his adventurous spirit, loved exploring with Christopher, whose curiosity knew no bounds. They were inseparable, a trio bound by youthful energy and boundless imagination. Together, they often ventured into Robin Hood Hills, a wooded area that became their playground. That Wednesday, as the sun dipped beyond the trees, the boys embarked on what seemed another innocent adventure. But when night cloaked the town in darkness, the boys remained absent. Panic gripped West Memphis as families and neighbors combed the area, flashlights slicing through shadows, calling their names into the deafening silence. The following afternoon, their bodies were discovered in a shallow creek, brutally murdered, sparking horror and disbelief. Evidence showed they were tied, and their injuries suggested a ritualistic nature. The gruesome scene shocked even seasoned officers. People whispered of the devil, their fears fanned by the wildfire of the satanic panic sweeping across America. The small town now bore the weight of a monstrous crime. Grieving families faced the media, searching for answers amid a storm of speculation and fear. It remains unclear how a town so ordinary could harbor such darkness. Attention turned swiftly to 3 local teenagers, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly. Damian, the perceived ringleader, with his penchant for heavy metal and black clothing, became the focal point of suspicion. His odd demeanor and interest in the occult painted him as the perfect villain in the eyes of a panicked community. Prosecutors argued that the murders bore the hallmarks of a satanic ritual, a theory that found fertile ground in the fervent imaginations of those desperate for answers. Jesse, with a reported IQ of 72, initially confessed to the crime during a lengthy, coercive interrogation. The details he provided were inconsistent, yet his confession became the prosecution's key evidence. Damian and Jason, despite maintaining their innocence, faced the full force of the law. Rumors and fear-mongering spread like wildfire, fueled by a media eager for sensation. The trial became a spectacle, a modern-day witch hunt with the teenagers cast as outsiders. Evidence was thin, circumstantial at best, yet the desire for justice demanded swift retribution. As the trial unfolded, the town and nation watched, gripped by a narrative of good versus evil. Conviction seemed inevitable. Damian received the death penalty, while Jason and Jesse faced life sentences. The verdicts offered closure to some, yet left many questions unanswered. But what investigators found just a few years later would change everything. We will get to that. For now, the story remained one of tragedy and confusion, a haunting reminder of the dread that seeped through West Memphis like a chilling fog. The years passed, but the doubts lingered. New forensic technologies emerged, offering a glimmer of hope for those who believed in the trio's innocence. DNA evidence, once dismissed or unavailable, now held the potential to unlock the truth. The Innocence Project began to take an interest, scrutinizing the case files with fresh eyes. Supporters rallied, driven by a conviction that justice had miscarried. They argued that a rush to judgment had condemned 3 young men while the real killer roamed free. The boys' families, once convinced of the trio's guilt, began to question the narratives they'd been fed. The case grew into a cause célèbre, drawing attention from celebrities and activists who amplified the call for re-examination. Damian from death row maintained his innocence, harnessing his words through letters and interviews that transformed him into a symbol of wrongful conviction. In 2007, new DNA testing offered the potential for revelation. The findings contradicted the prosecution's arguments, showing no match to Damian, Jason, or Jesse. Instead, the DNA evidence found at the crime scene pointed elsewhere, suggesting the presence of unidentified individuals. This breakthrough reignited public interest and skepticism about the original convictions. Prosecutors argued that the revelations did little to prove innocence. Still, doubt gnawed at the foundations of the case that once seemed so open and shut. Calls for a new trial grew louder, as did the question, if not them, then who? The search for truth had shifted, but the shadows remained. Would the justice system correct its course, or would the West Memphis Three remain ensnared in its web? In 2011, a dramatic twist would rewrite their fates. But before we get there, the battle for justice continued, and the lives of the boys and their families hung in the balance, tangled in a web of mystery, fear, and hope. The investigation splintered into chaos. Investigators struggled to piece together a coherent narrative. Key evidence, like the fibers found at the crime scene, were tenuous at best. They matched clothing from the boys' homes, common threads found in many households, hardly damning on their own. Yet these scraps of fabric were presented as irrefutable proof, weaving a tenuous thread through an already flawed case. Jesse Miskelly's confession, obtained after hours of intense questioning without a lawyer present, was riddled with inconsistencies. He claimed times and details that didn't align with known facts. Despite this, the jury accepted it, sealing the fate of the three teenagers. But was this confession genuine, or a desperate plea from an overwhelmed boy? As Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly languished behind bars, their supporters scoured the evidence, uncovering disturbing contradictions. Witnesses recanted their statements, admitting to coercion by police or their own wavering memories. The prosecution's satanic panic narrative unraveled, casting doubt on the certainty of guilt. Investigators overlooked critical leads. A man spotted covered in mud and behaving suspiciously near the crime scene vanished from police radar. This potential suspect, who could unravel the true events of that fateful night, slipped into obscurity. Why had this lead been ignored when every detail mattered? By 2007, the advances in DNA technology provided a breakthrough. The DNA found at the crime scene not only failed to match the West Memphis Three, but also introduced a new, unidentified presence. A strand of hair found in a knot used to bind the boys belonged to Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather. Hobbs had never been a suspect. This revelation sent shockwaves through the legal community. Terry Hobbs consistently denied involvement, his alibi shaky yet unchallenged during initial investigations. Could the stepfather have harbored secrets that went unnoticed in the frantic rush for justice? The revelation of Hobbs' connection forced a re-examination of past assumptions. The narrative, once painted with broad strokes of satanic ritual, now focused sharply on domestic issues and potential familial abuse. The prosecution maintained that this new evidence didn't exonerate the trio, yet the public and legal communities called for justice realignment. In 2011, as legal pressure mounted and public scrutiny intensified, a plea deal emerged. The Alford plea allowed the West Memphis Three to maintain their innocence while acknowledging that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict them. This agreement, while freeing them from prison, left a bitter taste. They walked free, yet the label of guilt lingered. The legal system, in its bid to avoid admitting fault, had offered freedom but not full exoneration. Damian, Jason, and Jesse stepped into a world forever altered, bearing scars of a system that had failed them. Their release stirred questions. If not them, then who had committed this atrocity? Today, the case stands unresolved. The West Memphis Three continue to fight for full exoneration, haunted by a past replete with unanswered questions. Terry Hobbs maintains his innocence, and no further charges have emerged. The true culprit remains obscured in shadows, shielded by a fortress of doubt and legal maneuvering. The haunting question persists: will the true killer ever face justice, or will the secrets of Robin Hood Hills remain buried forever? The town of West Memphis, still tainted by its history, waits for answers that may never come.